there's a voice. So as president of FoxPass, I just wanted to kick this off. We don't have a pass deck tonight because, as we were just speaking of, Pass as an umbrella organization, as of next week on the 15th, will no longer be with us. They were another kind of output of the COVID pandemic, couldn't get enough funding. You can go out and read the newsletter if you haven't read the email yet. And underneath that is my group, FoxPass, and the group that you've all joined tonight. And it's not going to be FoxPass as of next week, along with Pass going away. And we are in discussions with other user groups to potentially kind of usher the members into another user group in the Fox Valley area, or we might spin up something new. We're not quite sure yet, but thank you all for being a part of FoxPass so far and coming here for the last night of FoxPass. And, just personally, I've had such a great time being the president. I know I'm kind of a more quiet person, but I really did enjoy doing this. And it's unfortunate I can't see everyone in person to say this is the last thing that we're having. Maybe we'll have a little going away party when we can all see each other again. So again, thank you for being part of this. Thank you to all my directors over the last couple of years. This group has been running for like 8 years, and I had the pleasure of being the president for the last 2. So, Adam, who's on the call right now, has been with us the longest. So thank you very much, Adam. And of course, everyone else gave me ideas, and all the speakers, including Deepthi, who's going to take us out our last meeting tonight. Deepthi has spoken for us. She's absolutely wonderful. So I'm glad she's here tonight too. So thank you again. And this is the last one. So with that, Adam had a couple things to say. I think about Microsoft, right, Adam?
About my own journey, and yes, Microsoft. Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Lubke. I'm currently a customer engineer at Microsoft, and my journey to this position really started with the first FoxPass meeting almost a decade ago. I am one of the founding members and have since Jess Borland stepped down, they were our founding director and officer. I've been on our executive committee or board since then, usually working as the sponsor coordinator. And I'm excited that I can share an opportunity with you all. We try to take a moment at the beginning of our meetings, if anyone is hiring or is looking for work, to share a little bit of time and share a little bit of information. And the position that I have now is directly because Jess Borland earlier, who has been my mentor through FoxPass, started at Microsoft 2 years before me and was able to share this opportunity with me. And now in the same vein, my team at Microsoft is hiring. We're looking for, in general, across the board, customer engineers on many teams right now. We've been on a little bit of a hiring freeze because of a reorg, but that is done now. So definitely feel free to check out the Microsoft career page in general, which I will throw a link in the chat, and feel free to look for customer engineer roles. And then in particular, if you've worked with me at all over the past years, if you want to reach out to me and find out about what is a customer engineer role at Microsoft, and or what would it look like on my specific team. The positions for my team haven't yet opened up. My manager just gave us the thumbs up earlier this week that they will be coming down the road in the next couple of weeks. For my team, we're looking for people with Azure, data analytics, Power BI, Azure Data Factory, Synapse, HDI, Databricks, and Cosmos DB background. Now, we're not looking for people who are experts in all of those technologies, but somebody who is knowledgeable in at least one of them, and within a year's time could easily ramp up to be an expert on one of those, but would have some knowledge or awareness of some of those other technologies as well. So I threw if you don't have some other way to connect with me, I threw my LinkedIn in the chat as well. And feel free to reach out to me if you want to know more about what the customer engineer role entails. And if we've worked together in the past, feel free, I can let you know when the positions on my team open up, and pass your resume on to my manager. If anyone else has any positions they know their company is hiring for, or is looking for a new role, feel free to speak up now as well.
I work for Baker Tilly. They're always hiring. They're just this huge organization, so check them out too, I guess. Not as big as Microsoft, but pretty big.
They'll get there. They're working on it.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, I'll go ahead and hand things over to you, Deepthi. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Awesome, it's an honor. So can I go ahead and share my screen right now?
Go ahead.
So you are able to see my screen in presentation mode, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Adam, and Turner for giving me this wonderful opportunity. This is my second time presenting for Fox Valley User Group. It's really an honor for giving me an opportunity for the second time, and I really feel sad when Turner saying this is the last session. I really feel sad to hearing about that. But yeah, so today in this session, I'm going to present on the topic understanding statistics in SQL Server. Thank you so much, everyone, for making your time for attending this session. So yeah, let's get started. So a little bit about me. I'm a database administrator with 7 years of experience in managing SQL Server and databases. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer and Microsoft certified solution expert. I did my master's in computer technology at Eastern Illinois University. I blog for dbnuggets.com. That's my website. And you can contact me on Twitter at dbnuggets. That's my user ID. And down below, that's my email address. If you have any questions regarding this session later, please do not hesitate to contact me. I'm like always available on Twitter. So yeah, you can contact me on Twitter. So what are we going to discuss in this session today? We are going to see the overview of what are statistics, how to view them, and what happens when they are not accurate, what happens when they go wrong, and how to update these statistics. So statistics, what is it all about? Statistics are the blob structures which are saved inside the system tables, which describe the distribution of the data inside a column or set of columns or an indexed view. So basically, the optimizer, the query optimizer, will use and trust these statistics to determine how many rows it thinks they are going to come back out of a table, which is also known as cardinality estimates. So basically, based upon these cardinality estimate, the optimizer have to decide whether it have to do the index seek or scan, or how much memory grant should be allocated for any query to be processed. So the accurate these estimates are, it will help the optimizer to generate the good plans. So why should we even care about these statistics, right? Once we get created, SQL Server will automatically go ahead and take care of them. So why should we really care about why we have to update them manually? So if at all the estimates are not good, not accurate, and they are, for example, let's say, if the optimizer think there are only few rows that are coming out of the table, when in fact many rows are coming out of the table, right? That means that particular estimate is coming from those system tables. That means the estimates are wrong. So based upon those wrong estimates, the inefficient plan will be generated, and that particular plan will be saved inside the plan cache. So if at all the estimates are accurate, then that will create the efficient plan, which is the good enough plan, and the query response time will be good. But if the inefficient plan is saved inside the plan cache, the eventual executions of the query will cause the slow response time, and that will cause the performance issues. So it will also cause the excessive resource utilization, like high CPU, memory, and IO, if these estimates are not accurate. So let's take an example, like if the optimizer think there are only 100 rows coming out of a table, but in fact, when a query gets executed, 1 million rows are coming out of the table. The memory grants that are given to a particular query are released even before the query gets executed, right? So the memory grants are allocated to those only 100 rows, thinking it's only 100 rows coming out of the table, right? So the memory grant is also released so much, like very little. But when that particular query goes to the execution phase, the optimizer doesn't know what to do because that particular memory grant is not enough. It needs more to process 1 million records, right? To do the hashes and sorts. So it don't know what to do, that it have to actually use the tempdb, it have to spill to disk and use the tempdb for sorts and hashes. But in reverse, if more and more amount of memory is given to a particular query, then it needs, like, for example, if the estimates are showing the 1 million rows come out of a table, but in fact only couple of thousand rows that are actually coming out when the query is executed, that means the memory grants will also release based upon those estimates, right? The 1 million rows estimate. We are now allocating so much of memory that it actually doesn't require for that particular query to be processed. In that case, we are affecting the concurrency of the queries, and all these other queries have to wait for the memory grant to be released, because once the memory is allocated to a particular query, whether it being used or not used, that particular memory will be only released once the query gets executed. So it will affect the concurrency, and also it will reduce the throughput. So that is the reason why we have to make sure these estimates are accurate and why we have to keep them updated. So how the optimizer will use these statistics? The optimizer will use and trust these statistics to determine whether it have to do clustered index scan or non-clustered index scan or seek, what kind of, like whether it needs to do the lookups, and what kind of join it have to use, like whether it have to do hash join or nested loop or merge join, or whether it have to go serial or parallel, or what kind of execution mode might be used, like batch mode or row execution mode. All these operations are based upon these statistics. So the accurate the estimates are, it will eventually cause these downstream operations to be accurate as well inside our execution plan. But if the estimates are way too off, then it will cause it will affect all these downstream operations inside our execution plan, which will eventually create the non-optimal plan to be saved inside the plan cache. So what could go wrong here? Before going into what could go wrong, any query that is being submitted to the SQL Server, it have to pass through a couple of components behind the scenes. So there are basically two stages. One is the query optimization stage, as well as the query execution phase. Let's say, for example, a query is being submitted to the SQL Server. So the first thing that happens is the query will be parsed first. It will check if there are any syntactical errors, and then that a hash is put on the query that we are submitting, and it will check against the hash of the query inside our execution plan, like whether the same execution plan for that query is already existed in the cache or not. If it finds the exact match of the execution plan, that particular query, it will go ahead and use the same execution plan, which is already there inside our plan cache. And it will go ahead and use that execution plan for the execution phase. But what if it didn't find the execution plan, right, inside the plan cache? It will go ahead and build the initial logical tree for the first time. And then the query will be going to the transformation phase. So at the transformation phase, all these transformation rules are unblocked. And at certain point of time, so many equivalent query plans are generated for that particular query. And for each of these equivalent logical trees, the cardinality estimates have to be gathered. And once these cardinality estimates are gathered on each of these equivalent logical trees, the cost should be checked on each of the a logical tree. The lowest cost execution plan will be the winner, and that particular plan will be now saved inside the plan cache. So once that query will goes to the execution phase, the plan that is already saved inside the plan cache will be used for the execution phase. But before the query goes to the execution phase, the memory grants are allocated to that particular query based upon those cardinality estimates. So once the memory grant has been allocated, that particular query will go to the query execution phase. That's the regular process. But what can happen wrong, right? What can go wrong here? What if this particular thing goes wrong here, the cardinality estimates? What if the cardinality estimate, like the optimizer think there are only a couple of rows coming out of a table, but in fact, million rows are coming out of the table, right? So if the estimates are wrong, then the query plans that are generated based upon those wrong cardinality estimates, the cost will be suspect here too, right? Because it will go ahead and give the cost based upon those wrong cardinality estimates for those equivalent trees. And finally, the non-optimal plan will be saved inside the plan cache, and that plan will now go to the execution phase. And before going into the execution phase, that memory grant will be released only for the few amount of rows because it thinks only few amount of rows will be coming out of the table, right? But that is not enough when the query goes to the execution phase. The query optimizer have to do the hashes and sorts. This particular memory is not sufficient, so it have to go ahead and do its hashes and sorts inside the tempdb, and it will have to eventually spill to disk. So all these things happened, like all these downstream operations went wrong just because this one cardinality estimate went wrong. So that is the reason why it is so important to keep these. So we have talked about the memory grants, but from where these memory grants come from? There is a memory component inside the SQL Server, which is known as the fixed memory. This particular fixed memory is fixed. The name itself stays as fixed because it cannot be expanded or shrinked when there is a memory pressure. Now, from the server side, resource governor will be handling this fixed memory. Now, what kind of things will be saved inside this fixed memory? The memory grant connections, which we use for the hashes and sorts of the query, those kind of connections are saved inside the fixed memory. Now, whenever a query gets submitted to the SQL Server, the memory grants will be allocated for the query even before going into the execution based upon if our plan has hashes and sorts, and also the cardinality estimates. Like as we discussed previously, if the estimates are very low when compared with the actual, then the memory grants will be low and the optimizer have to spill to disk, right? But in reverse, if more and more queries are requesting for the more memory than they actually need, then that will eventually cause this fixed memory to be full, right? But there is no way that this particular fixed memory to be expanded because it cannot be expanded and shrinked when there is a memory pressure. Now, because of these memory grants because of more and more memory grants are being requested, this particular memory do not know what to do. So there is a alert system inside the SQL Server, which will give the alert to the other caches. Like let's take the plan cache and the buffer pool. These are the major components of the memory architecture, right? And the plan cache and buffer pool can be easily expanded and shrinked when there is a memory pressure because they have backing mechanisms in them. Like let's say the plan cache, the store procedures which are saved inside the plan cache, the query text behind the store procedure are saved inside the system tables. Now, whenever the fixed memory gets full and fixed memory can't be expanded and shrinked, SQL Server will go ahead and request this plan cache. Let's take, for example, plan cache. It will go ahead and request the plan cache to evict the execution plans out of the cache such that it can get some memory that it can use for the fixed memory so that the memory grants can be released for the queries. So it's not easy to get these memory grants. Like there is limited amount of memory inside the SQL Server, right? So when there is a memory pressure, like for the memory grants, the other caches will be affected. Like they have to go ahead and evict the plans such that they can get memory for these memory grants. And during this process, while the plan cache releasing the memory, during that time frame, we have these memory error with message 701 inside our error log. And there is an internal memory leak and memory pressure. And while this thing is happening, while these plans are getting evicted out of the plan cache, and while that memory being released to the fixed memory, none of the other operations can access this fixed memory. That means all these other operations have to wait in line until these previous operations get the memory they need. So that is how the memory grants get released. So it is very important because the memory grants are released based upon those estimates, right? So if the accurate the estimates are, then the memory grants will be correctly released. If they are up and down, then it will affect memory grants. So we have talked enough about the memory grants. So let's dive into the statistics part. So there are a couple of options we have in the database level for the statistics. So let's talk about the first option, which is auto create statistics. The auto create statistics option is enabled by default. Whenever the auto create statistics is enabled, whenever SQL Server thinks there is a use of these particular statistics, if it thinks the optimizer can go ahead and use these statistics, it will just go ahead and create the statistics on the fly behind the scenes. The second option is auto update statistics. It is also enabled by default. So whenever the auto update statistics is enabled and SQL Server think there is an outdated statistics, it will just go ahead and update the statistics on the fly behind the scenes. And I request to keep these both options, the auto create statistics and auto update statistics, to be turned on. In some scenarios, there might be some cases where we need to turn off, but in most of the cases, I will suggest you to keep these options turned on. The third option is auto update stats asynchronously. This particular option is turned off by default. And in the coming slides, I'm going to explain in detail when this option will be really useful. The fourth option is auto creates incremental statistics. This particular option is disabled by default, and it is especially for partitioning. If you have partitioning on your tables, then you can think about this option to be enabled, but it is disabled by default and we do not have to worry about it if we do not have any partitioning. So there are many ways to create these statistics. The first is SQL Server will go ahead and create these statistics automatically because your database level option, auto create statistics, is turned on by default. So when it creates statistics automatically, whenever we create an index, it might be clustered index, non-clustered index, filtered index, or indexed view. Whenever your auto create stats is turned on in the database level, then SQL Server will go ahead and automatically create statistics on these columns where the index has been built with the same exact name of the index. Let's take an example. Here I created a non-clustered index, and whenever I created a non-clustered index and I query on the sys.stats view, then I can clearly see a statistics that got created with the exact same name of the clustered of the non-clustered index. But these two are two different things, right? The index is completely different from the statistics. Those, though those names are same, right? The index will save the data itself, but the statistics will just describe the distribution of the data inside a column. Statistics can also be automatically created on single columns. Like for example, here, like SQL Server will automatically create the statistics on any column. Like if we are searching on a column or if we are joining on a column, it will just go ahead and automatically create the statistics on that particular column. For example, here we are searching on the color column, right? So the first time when I execute this particular query, now this particular column, the color column, is not in the key values of the index, the key columns of the index. So if at all it is not in the key column of an index, the SQL Server will just go ahead and create the statistics on the fly behind the scenes. But if you observe here, by using the sys.stats view, the statistics that got generated is system generated. By looking at itself, we can say that it is system generated. Now how we can read it, right? The underscore WA represent Washington State, underscore sys represents system generated, underscore 0006 is the column number inside the table, and underscore 08B5, that particular number is a hexadecimal value of the table. That's how we read the statistics, which is automatically generated, the system generated. And whenever we join on a column also, the statistics get created automatically. Here, we are joining on the list price column. So whenever you do the sys.stats view to view the statistics, the system generated statistics is being created here. Now the statistics can also be created manually. They can be manually created on multiple columns, single columns, as well as we can also create the statistics by filtering out the values in a column. Now, how do we view these statistics, right? The sys.stats view, which we discussed in the previous slides, it will give you the list of statistics we have for a table. But if you wanted to know in depth about a particular statistic, you can use dbcc show statistics, dbcc command. Now, whenever you use this dbcc show statistics, you have three kind of information you can view about a particular statistic. You'll get the header information, density vector, and histogram. I'm going to go in deep into what are these and how to view the statistics in our demo, but this is just an overview of how to view statistics. For the latest versions of SQL Server, sysdmdb stats properties can be used just to get the header information part. And sysdmdb stats histogram can be used just to get the histogram part. But when you compare with dbcc show statistics and this sysdmdb stats properties and histogram, information will be the same. This particular session is all like demo driven. So let me go ahead and start the demo. Maybe have to view, share. Turner, can you see my slide? Sorry, my management studio.
Yep, I can see the code.
Thank you. So in this particular demo, I'm using AdventureWorks database, but I mentioned big at the end of it because I added 2 new tables by using Jonathan Kehai's script, which he have written for SQLskills.com. So here is the link. So let me go ahead and put the database in the context. And also I added 2 new tables. One is the sales order header enlarge and other is sales order detail enlarge. So whenever I call these names of the tables. I'll just mention sales order header and sales order detail just for easy pronunciation. So to view the indexes on particular table, we use sp_help index. So when you see the results, the index name, and we can see the index description and the index keys. So in this particular demo, we are mainly focusing on this particular non-clustered index, which has been created on customer ID column. So when I created this non-clustered index on the customer ID column, SQL Server went ahead and created a statistics with the same exact name on the customer ID column. We can view the statistics by using sys.stats view. When I execute that particular query, we can see the name of the table. And first we will see the statistics which are related to primary key, and then the statistics related to all the non-clustered indexes. And then we will see the system generated statistics with the system name. And to view the statistics as sp_help stats, we can use it, but it is deprecated, but until they completely remove it, we can still view it. So when you see sp_help stats, you'll get the statistics name and on which column the statistic got created. Very useful. And to view the statistics, any particular statistic in detail, you can use DPCC show statistics by giving the table name as well as the statistics name. When I execute that, now here we are viewing the statistics which got created on customer ID column when I created the non-clustered index, right? So we have three parts in it: the header information, density vector, and the histogram. Let's talk about the header information. This particular name column represents the name of the statistic. When this particular statistics was lastly updated, it got updated a couple of hours ago. And how many rows we have in this particular statistics? 2.4 million. And how many rows were sampled? 2.4 million. That means it got sampled with the exact 100%. And how many steps we have in this particular statistics? It's 153. So basically in the SQL Server, the maximum number of steps we can have for the histogram is 200 steps. But there is an additional one step if you have a nullable column, if your column accepts null values in it. But here in my demo for the customer ID column statistics, we just have 153 steps and we do not have any null values. And the density, this is the density value. And if at all this particular statistics is filtered or not, this particular statistics is not filtered. So the unfiltered rows are 2.4 million. When you see the density vector part here, this particular value 5.23 is the density vector value. How does this get calculated? Like 1 divided by total number of distinct values we have in customer ID column. That's how this value gets calculated. The lower the number is, the higher that column is unique, like more unique values. So when you come to the histogram part, this is where the optimizer will go ahead and get the statistics information from. The first column is range high key. This particular column will represent the values inside the customer ID column, but not each and every single value is represented here because we just have 200 steps, right? We can't fit in each and every value. So that is the reason we have range rows. But before going into range rows, let's see what these equal rows are. So for the customer ID value of 11,000, we have equal number of rows 231. For the customer ID value of 11,019, we have equal rows of 1309. That's how the equal rows are calculated. But when you see the range rows, for all the customer ID values of customer ID value 11,000 and 11,019, we have total number of rows 3,619. So that's how the range rows are calculated, all the values in between these two values. But the distinct range rows, let's take an example. Like if I'm doing a select and searching on the column customer ID with a value of 11,005, let's take. But 11,005 is not represented in the range hierarchy, right? It's in between these two values. So how the optimizer does the calculation is, it will take the total number of rows that are in between these two values, 3,619, and it will divide that by the distinct values, like how many distinct values we have in between these two rows, which are 18. So it will divide 3,619 by 18, which will give you 201 rows. And same with these two values. The distinct rows are 71, so it will divide the total number of rows by 71, which will give you 201. So that's how the SQL Server, like the optimizer, will go ahead and get the statistics information from this histogram. Now, as I told you, like SysDM DB stats properties also will show you the same kind of information like DBCC shows statistics. Especially for the header information, we'll just get the header part, and the histogram will give you the histogram part. Now, let's take an example now. Let's do a simple select where customer ID is 11,091. This particular 11,091 value, when you go and see in the histogram, 11,091 value is pretty unique inside the histogram, right? So we have equal number of rows, 2,156, right? So whenever we do a select on this customer ID column with a unique value, which is actually represented in the histogram, when you enable the actual execution plan and execute it, check the execution plan. Oops, sorry, something happened. Let me execute that again. Actually, my Zoomit is not working properly, so I'll just show you over here the 2,116. Beside you see the 100% that represent the how many rows that does the optimizer estimated, but the top value 2,156 are the actual number of rows. So as my Zoomit is not working properly, you can just see the down part is the estimate and the upper part of the number is the actual number. So here you see 2,156 and the actual number of rows that got returned are 2,156, right? The 100% exact match, because that particular value is actually represented in the histogram. But what if I will go ahead and choose a different value, 11,225. When you check the histogram, here 11,000, how much is that? 11,225. 11,225 is in between these two values, right? So SQL Server, like the optimizer, will go ahead and grab that information because the optimizer doesn't know how many exact number of rows we have for that particular value, right? It's in between these two values. So it will just go ahead and divide this particular value with 52, which gives 263. So let's see how much it will estimate. When I execute that particular query and check the execution plan, 264, the exact match, right? It got from the range values 264, but the actual number of rows is 154. What if instead of using the value, what if I declared the variable and then I set the variable and then use the variable inside the where clause? In the execution plan, we see a different value, right? It is estimating 127 rows when the actual number of rows is 2,156. Where is this value coming from, 127? Let's see. So whenever we are using the variable, SQL Server will get that particular value from the density vector. Now, when you see the histogram, in the histogram, you have this particular density vector value, right? So the SQL Server will go ahead and multiply this density vector value with the total number of rows inside that particular statistic. So it will go ahead and multiply these two values to get the estimate whenever we are using any variable. So when we multiply these both, you get the exact match, 126, right? We'll go ahead and grab the information from the density vector. So what if instead of using the equality, I just used inequality here with the same variable when I execute that particular query? Now, did you observe the execution plan is completely different now? It's not like the clustered index with a key lookup. It's not that. It just did the clustered index scan. It thought it is better to do the clustered index scan. Now let's see why. Did you see here the estimate is like way above, right? 726,000, when in actual it's just got 19,000. Now why is that so different? Right? Whenever you use the inequalities in your query, then SQL Server will always get that estimate from 30%. Like it will multiply the total number of rows we have inside the statistic by 30%. When you check that, you just got the same number, 726,000. Now, we all have, we do not do most of the ad hoc queries, right? We always put them in stored procedures. So what if I go ahead and execute the same query inside the stored procedure? So I created the store procedure and I'm going ahead and executing the store procedure for the first time with this particular customer ID value. Let me go ahead and execute that. And let's see the execution plan. 100% match, right? The estimates are 77 and the actuals are also 77. Because this particular value we are using is actually unique inside our histogram. But what if I go ahead and execute the store procedure the next time with a different value? When I execute that, what happens is when we actually executed the store procedure for the first time, it should not, what happened to them? It actually did the 100% match. I'm not really sure how it did that. It should actually use the same execution plan from this. Let me go ahead and execute that because yeah, now it created, I don't know why, what happened, but it should actually use the same previous execution plan because for the first time when I executed the query with a parameter value, it created an execution plan with a 77 estimate, right? Estimated values. But for the next time, whenever I executed the same query with a different parameter value, it should go ahead and use the same execution plan that it got created for the previous value. But I'm not really sure why it created a different execution plan right now. Let me go ahead and execute this. See the 100%. But if you go ahead and execute this particular value, it went ahead and used this particular execution plan which got created for the second parameter. I don't know why, but yeah, so it is so important to make sure that optimal plan is getting saved inside our plan cache, because if you have so much of skew in your data, like if your execution plan that is saved inside the plan cache have like couple of thousand of rows that are coming out of a table, like if it estimates that, and if for the next parameter 1 million rows are coming out of the table, right, then that will cause the memory grants that are allocating for that particular query to be affected. Like if you don't have skews, lot of skews in your data, then that should be okay, but we should always keep an eye on what kind of execution plan is getting saved for our queries. Now, instead of declaring customer ID value, what if I declare some other column, the person ID, and then declare the customer ID and use that customer ID in the query? Let me go ahead and create that particular query, like the store procedure. And I'm going ahead and creating this particular, I'm going ahead and executing this particular store procedure with a person ID. Now, when you see the estimate over here, the estimate is 127, but the actual is 308. Not pretty much large difference, but where does this 127 coming from, right? Let's see. So we are not declaring the customer ID value, we are declaring something else, right? So the optimizer at the pre-optimization stage, it doesn't know what this customer ID value is. So it do not know where to get the estimates from. So whenever it do not know where to get the estimates from, it will actually go ahead and grab that value from the density vector. So 127 is a value like when you multiply that the density vector value with the total number of rows, that's where we get 127 value. So let's see a different query, like not only getting the values from sales order header table, but also let's join with sales order detail table. And also let's go ahead and search on the order date column, the date range values, right? Let's take 1 month first, and then in the next query, let's take 12 months. Let me go ahead and execute both the queries at the same time. And let's see the execution plan for both of them, for 1 month date range and for 12 months date range. So it's still executing, but when you observe here, it's actually using clustered index scan. And when you see the estimates, they are pretty close, right? The estimate is 4,665 and the actual is 5,066, pretty close, as this is just 1 month date range. And also I would like to tell you something here, like based upon how many rows are coming out of this particular sales order header table, it also depends how that operation is going to run for the downstream operations. Like based upon these 4,665 values, the index seek on sales order detail table also depended, because only few rows are coming out of the sales order header table. It thought like, let's go ahead and just do the index seek because there are only few rows coming out of sales order header table. But when you come here for the 12-month date range, here the rows that are coming out of the table are many, right? 105K. The estimates and actuals are pretty close. But when you observe here, the sales order detail table thought it would be better to do clustered index scan because there are many rows that it have to be processed. So it thought it would be better to do clustered index scan instead of seek. And when you observe here downstream, it has actually done the hash match and sort over here because of the large amount of data, right? But here, when you see, it did just the nested loops and key lookup, which is just for the 1 month date range. That's based upon the like how much data we are getting out of a query. Now, let me go ahead and show you like row and page count for this table. Sales order header table. When I execute that, we are mainly focusing on this particular sales order header enlarged, this particular index, right? The non-clustered index. So we have 2.4 million rows, right? Now, what if I go ahead and trick the optimizer just to show you how the bad estimates will affect the execution plan? What if I go ahead and trick the optimizer by saying we do not have 2.4 million rows, we just have 1 million rows. We can do that by using the update statistics, by mentioning the table as well as the index, and by mentioning with row count 1 million. So I'm going ahead and updating the statistics. So now the optimizer will only think that there are only 1 million rows instead of 2.4 million rows. Now let's go ahead and execute the same queries with 1 month date range and with 12-month date range, right? What will happen to the execution plans? Does they look the same? And what about the estimates? So for the 1 month date range, if you observe here, previously we have 4,665 rows, but now as the optimizer think there are only 1 million rows, it affected the estimate. It just thinks there are only 1900 rows, right? That are coming out of the table. It estimate that, but in actual, we have 5,066 rows. Now, yeah, so based upon that, even the index seek, which is on the sales order detail table, also affected. But pretty much the structure of the execution plans remain the same. But when you go to the 12-month date range execution plan, here the estimates are like way too low than the actuals, right? It's more like the estimates are just 43,000 and the actuals are 105,000, which is like more than double, right? Even though like the clustered index scan also got affected, it is still doing the clustered index scan because of so many rows, but the estimates is completely different here based upon those rows, based upon these estimates. And when you observe here, now the sort, previously there is a sort also, but there is no exclamation mark. But now we have the exclamation mark. That means there is a warning symbol saying, when you check the warnings over here, it says the operation use the TempDB. It has actually spilled 1500 pages to the TempDB. Now, why is that? Previously, we do not have this warning symbol, right? But why do we have now? We tricked the optimizer in such a way that it did not only affected how many estimate does it think it is going to come back. It did not only affected the estimates, but based upon those wrong estimates, the memory grant has been allocated like only to that particular million rows. But in actual, we have many rows, right? So the optimizer doesn't know what to do. It needs more memory to sort this operation. So it has to actually spill to the disk 1500 pages. So all I am trying to tell you here is whenever the estimates are wrong, it doesn't only affect the estimate part, but it also affects the memory grant, and eventually it will cause the non-optimal plan to be saved inside the plan cache. So to correct this, we trick the optimizer by saying we just have 1 million rows, right? To correct that part, we can go ahead and update do the DBCC update usage with count rows, which will immediately correct that back to 1 million to 2.4 million. But I wanted to remain this as is because we have the second demo part. I'm going to use that. Let me go ahead and open the update stats. So for my second demo here, I'm using AdventureWorks 2016 database. So in my previous demo, we have tricked the optimizer, right? So I'm going ahead and using like update stats once again with the row count, but this time I'm not mentioning 1 million. I'm mentioning the actual number, which should reverse back to the original amount, 2.4 million. I'm going ahead and executing that. And when you check the DBCC show statistics here, it should change back to 2.4 million rows. So now what I'm trying to do here is I wanted to go ahead and update the statistics by default sample. So if you observe here, I'm just making like update stats, providing the table name as well as the stats name, but I'm not mentioning any percentage over here, right? That's when the SQL Server will go ahead and decide itself the default sample. We do not have to mention any percentage. Now, when I go ahead and execute that, and let me go ahead and show you DBCC show statistics. Now this particular stats got updated, right? It just got updated. And when you check here, previously we have 2.4 million, which is 100%, right? But right now, SQL Server go ahead and decided the default sample for us, which is 91,702 rows, which is pretty much okay. In most of the cases, it should be okay. But if you have a lot of skew in your data, and if you have OLTP systems where you have a lot of inserts, updates, deletes are going on, in that particular scenario, it is advisable to update the stats 100%. But most of the time, this should be okay. Now let me go ahead and do some queries, right? By joining both sales order header table with the sales order detail table and searching on the customer ID value. Let me just go ahead and run these both values. 2 are enough. I'm sorry, I did not enable the actual execution plan on. When you check the execution plan, both of them shows the similar kind of plans, right? The index seek with the key lookup. But when you observe here, the estimates 97, it shows 97, and the actuals are 154. It's not pretty bad, but that difference is coming from the default sample, right? It is okay because the estimate as well as actual is pretty close here. But when you check for the other query, even this is close, right? 1100 and 1309. But when you run this particular query, it might show a different value. See here, the estimates are only 237 rows, but the actual number of rows are 2,156. Now, as I told you, like if you have a lot of skew in your data, it is always advisable to update the statistics with 100%. In my demo, I have skew in my data. So for each value, the estimates are different, right? So let me go ahead and show you how the auto update stats work, right? To clearly show how the auto update stats work, let me go ahead and turn off the auto update stats on this particular database to show the effect. So I have turned the auto update stats off. That means even though the SQL Server will go ahead and find the outdated statistics, as we have disabled the auto update stats to turn off, SQL Server doesn't go ahead and update the stats automatically, right? Now, let me go ahead and show you. Not here, yeah, this one. Let me go ahead and show you how many rows that needs to be changed to get this particular stats to get out of date, right? When I execute that, we are mainly focusing on this particular statistic on customer ID. So we have 2.4 million rows in this particular stats. This particular stat is still updated with default sample. But here, when you see, there is an old threshold, right? So before SQL Server 2016, the old threshold is just for this particular statistics is like it have to go ahead and update 485,000 rows needs to be updated to get this particular stats to be outdated. Like it have to hit this particular threshold, right? But for the newer threshold is very, very small when compared with the old threshold. For SQL Server 2016 and above, we have this new threshold. that this particular, they have to like 49,221 rows needs to be changed for this particular stats to get outdated. So until this particular threshold is reached, that particular stats doesn't get outdated. So as this database is 2019 database, it should hit 49,221 rows. So let me go ahead and update. So let me go ahead and update the table to hit that particular threshold. Because we are updating a lot of data, it is taking a little bit of time. So it has actually exceeded the limit, right? Way above. So right now, this particular stat is out of date. But as we turn off auto update stats to be turned off, this particular stats won't be updated, right? So generally, when your auto update stats is turned on, and when your stats get out of date, then the next time you are running any query which is using that outdated statistic, then the SQL Server should get activate, and then it will go ahead and update the stats automatically. Now let me go ahead and execute a query which is actually using that outdated statistic. But even though I go ahead and execute that, it doesn't go ahead and update the stats, right? Usually, if your auto update stats is turned on, then the SQL Server should go ahead and update the stats whenever I execute a query which is using that outdated statistics. While that query is running itself, behind the scenes, first that stats should be updated, and then the execution plan, the outdated execution plan, will be also like disabled, like it will be outdated, and then it will be replaced with the new execution plan. That means that particular statement will be recompiled, and then a new execution plan will be generated. And then this particular query will use that new execution plan, because that new execution plan will have updated stats in it, right? And then it will produce the results to the user. It can take a little bit amount of time to do all these operations behind the scenes. So when you observe that, the execution plans remains the same. And when you observe here, the estimates are just showing 1800 rows, right? 1895. But when you see the actuals, it's 890K, because our auto update stats is did not kick in because we turned it off, right, on the database level. Now, what if I go ahead and set the auto update stats to turn on this time? Now, the next time I go ahead and use that outdated statistics in a query, when I execute this particular query, which is using that outdated statistic, now SQL Server should go ahead and behind the scenes, it should first update the statistics, that outdated statistics, create a new execution plan with that particular updated stats. And then this particular query will now use that stats, and then it will produce the results. Most of the time, it should not cause an issue because it is automatically enabled on each and every database. But in certain scenarios, this might cause a problem, which I'm going to explain later. So when you check the execution plan, did you observe the plan completely got changed, right? Now, instead of doing the index key, like clustered index seek and the key lookup, the optimizer thought it would be really better to do the clustered index scan on the entire table. And when you observe the estimates over here, they are pretty much close to the actuals, right? And that particular difference is because our stats is still updated with the default sample. Now, if we wanted to know whether our stats got really updated or not, you can check by using DBCC show statistics. And when you check here, it just got updated, right? With the still it updated with the default sample, but it just got updated. And now let me show you how these statistics will update the will affect the stored procedures. Now let me go ahead and create a stored procedure with the same query which I put in the stored procedure. And let me go ahead and execute that stored procedure with the same parameter, but let's do that 10 times to just show you like a couple of things. It did index seek and the key lookup as normal. And when I go ahead and check for my execution plan, query plans with the query, here the execution count of that particular query which we executed is 10 times, right? And it created an execution plan, which is the same plan which we have seen. And let me go ahead and now let me go ahead and show you the row count one more time here. The threshold actually. This is the statistics we are focusing on. Now we have to hit this particular threshold, right? For 49,221. Let's go ahead and update. Update. I don't think this will hit the threshold. Let me add a couple of more rows with a different value actually. This should hit the threshold. Let me go ahead and update. I hope it will hit the threshold. Yes. Now let's go ahead and see the threshold, whether it reached the threshold or not. We can see the row modification counter, right? So this is the non-clustered index, like this is the statistics we are focusing on. Now, did you observe the row modification has actually hit the threshold, right? Way above the threshold. But now, if I execute this particular query, which is the same stored procedure, which is actually using that outdated statistics because we have reached the threshold, right? Now that particular stats is outdated, but now our auto update stats is turned on. When I execute this particular query, behind the scenes, it will go ahead and update the statistic. Did I even, yeah. So let me go ahead and show you whether it updated the stats or not. It just got updated, right? Because it just sampled the rows, just 91,000. It did pretty quick. Now to know whether it has actually updated the stats, we have seen the DBCC show statistics, but how do we know whether it has actually created the execution plan, right? Now, when I go ahead and see the execution plan in this query, now did you observe here the execution plan has been actually, the execution plan generated number is number 2. The new query plan got generated for this particular query. But how do I know if update stats is the reason why my execution plan got recompiled, right? How do I know that? We can use the extended events to know that. So I'm going ahead and creating a extended event and especially filtering on the database ID as well as on the SQL statement recompile. By filtering on those, let me go ahead and create the event. This particular event already exists. So let me just go ahead and start the event. In my Object Explorer, let me go ahead and open up the extended event sessions and let's track it by using watch live data. Let me close this. Let me put this aside. side by side. Let me close this. So now we can easily track this down if my update stats is actually recompiling by the store procedure, right? Let me go ahead and update bunch of records one more time to hit that particular threshold. Right, we have actually exceeded the threshold. Let me go ahead and check the row modification counter. When I executed that, we are mainly focusing on this particular statistics, right? So it has actually exceeded the threshold, right? 49,000. Now let me go ahead and execute the store procedure one more time so that it is actually using that outdated stats, because we need to use that outdated stats in the next query to get that to get our stats updated. So let me go ahead and execute that. So now that query got executed. Now if you check here, the status says other, but if you observe here, the stats update. So stats got updated here, updated the stats, and on the above you see the stats null, but the SQL statement recompiled. And when you observe here, this particular statement got recompiled, right? So that's how we'll know that our auto update stats has actually recompiled our store procedure. That's how we know. Let me close that. Let me go ahead and stop the event. And let me hop back into my slides. So in our demo, we have seen the old and new threshold, right? So the old threshold is before SQL Server 2016. We have that value, which is the old threshold. So basically the old threshold meaning so the row modification should be 20% and 5%, 500 number of rows should be changed actually. 20% rows plus 500 number of rows should be changed. So that particular stats will be out of date. So the new threshold is way, way small when compared with the old threshold. It is the square root of 1,000 times number of rows. So whenever this auto update stats is enabled, and when SQL Server found that outdated statistics, and when you execute a query which is actually using that outdated stats for the very first time after that particular stats got outdated, then SQL Server will go ahead and update the stats behind the scenes. So this particular new threshold is for SQL Server 2016 and higher, and it is enabled by default, and for the database compatibility of greater than 130. And there are also older versions, like for the older versions also, you can enable this new threshold by turning on the trace flag to 2371. There are a couple of things we need to remember here. Let's go from the bottom to top. So for the SQL Server 2012 and above, what we have seen here in our demo is whenever SQL Server has actually hit the threshold and we have that row modification counter, right? The row modification has exceeded that particular threshold. And whenever we executed the query, the next sign using that outdated stats, then SQL Server will go ahead and update the stats at the same time. It will go ahead and recompile the store procedure or the query, and then it will go ahead and generate the new execution plan, right? But what if the auto update stats is turned on, but if no data has been changed, if the row modification counter has not been changed, then SQL Server will think there is no need of plan invalidation, right? For the SQL Server 2012 and above, it doesn't go ahead and invalidate. It will just, the plans will remain the same. Before SQL Server 2012, if your auto update stats is turned on, regardless of the data changed or not, the plans gets invalidated. So before SQL Server 2012, if the auto update stats is turned off, regardless of the change or not, the row modification counter, the plans doesn't get invalidated. So this particular option, the auto update stats asynchronously option, I have said I will be talking about it later, right? So this is the slide. This particular option is disabled by default. And usually when the auto update stats is turned on, then for the SQL Server 2019, whenever that particular stat, outdated stat is being updated and that plan has been generated, the new plan, then for the SQL Server 2019, we see this wait type with the name wait on sync stats refresh, because we can clearly see that wait type while these stats get updated. So in most of the cases, that should not cause any problem. But if your auto update stats is being kicked in the middle of the business day, and your business user doesn't want this to happen in the middle of the day, because these users are handling like those other queries are they're hanging up until these auto update stats has been running, and those queries get held until the updates happen, right? It should update the stats, generate the new execution plan, and then that new plan will be used by the query that the user is sending, right? And then he will get the results. If that is causing a problem, there is a special option, auto update stats asynchronously. If you turn this option on, then what we are saying to the SQL Server is, even if you find the outdated stats, just don't go ahead and update the stats the next time the user is running a query, and that particular query is using the outdated stats. Even though you find that, do not go ahead and update the stats right at that moment, but just go ahead and use the same old execution plan and same old outdated stats for that particular user. And once he get the results immediately, then go ahead and update the stats later. That's what this option means, and it is really, really useful for the companies where you have lot of inserts, updates going on, because it is very easy for to kick in this to get this outdated, right? Because the row modification counter is very small. It is easy to be get updated in the middle of the day, and usually that should not cause any problem. But if you think that is causing a problem, this option is really useful. Even though auto update stats is turned on, auto create stats is turned on, it is always advisable to maintain these update stats separately during your outage window by using the maintenance plans. You can use the native maintenance plans that we can generate inside our management studio. But if you use those maintenance plans, those SSIS package which we create inside the maintenance plans, we do not have much options, right? We just can do the full scan. We cannot tweak into that query. So in that particular scenario, it is really useful to use the Ola Helengren scripts, which are free, and you can just go ahead and tweak into the stats. Like if you have particular stats which need to be updated very frequently with full scan, then you have the options to do that by using Ola Helengren scripts. And there are also separately two separate options that you can use while updating these stats. Like if you have any specific stats that are really being used by most of your queries, then you can use these options. Like the first one is no recompute. So what this no recompute does is, whenever you update stats by using the no recompute option, even though you are saying to the SQL Server, like even though the auto update stats is turned on, because my users doesn't want to be waiting until this auto update stats to be kicked in while the query gets running behind the scenes, do not update the stats. Even though your update stats is turned on the database, do not update the stats for this particular stat, but instead, whenever I am running the update stats by using the no recompute, then go ahead and update the stats. That's no recompute. The second option is persist sample %. whenever you are updating your stats by using persist sample %, usually it will be a full scan. So when you are mentioning that particular option, you are telling to the SQL Server, even though the auto update stats is turned on, do not go ahead and update the stats by the default sample. Do not do by yourself. Just go ahead and update the stats by the % that I am mentioning here. If I am mentioning 100%, then every time you think the auto update stat should occur, just go ahead and update the particular stats by 100%. And this particular option, persist sample %, is for the SQL Server 2016 SP1, CU4, SQL 2017 CU1, and for the later versions, obviously. So what we have discussed in this session today? We have seen the overview of stats. What are these statistics? How to view statistics? What are the memory grants? How do the memory grants get generated for the particular query? And what happens when these stats are not accurate, and what happens when they are wrong, and how to update these stats. So in order for me to prepare for this presentation, I have viewed these are the main resources that have been following. If you want to know more about the stats, please view these references. And I would like to thank Turner one more time for giving me this wonderful opportunity. I really appreciate it, and I really hope to see you all in person once this pandemic gets over. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Are there any questions on the line while we have Deepthi here? Okay, well, thank you again. And yep, this is the last FoxPass meeting, and it was a wonderful presentation. Thank you very much. And we will hopefully see everyone in person, like Deepthi said. And have a good night.
Have a good night, Turner. Adam, bye. Bye. Thank you.
Take care. Thanks again for speaking.
Thank you. Bye.